Hello, learners. Greetings to you all. This is teacher Baib Simon, the teacher of biology and chemistry. Today, we are going to learn biology in this session, and we are going to learn about classification. I want to welcome you all for this session. Endeavor to subscribe to my YouTube channel and endeavor to share the YouTube channel to your fellow colleagues so that we can learn together. And in this session, when we are going to learn about classification, I want us to learn about these ones. By the end of this session, I want us to know what is classification of living things. Then, the main reason is for classification of living things. We shall have to learn about the levels of classification. Then, lastly, we shall learn about the scientific naming of living things. And here we go. We shall start with the first. What is classification of living. Hello learners. Have you ever gone to a supermarket? Or have you ever gone to a school library? If you have ever visited any of those two places, how many books do we find in the library? How many books do we find in a library? Then, if you are ever going to a supermarket, how many items do we find in a supermarket? Of course, the answers we are going to give is that we have very many books we find in the library. We have a variety of books we find in the library. The same way, we have a variety of items we find in a supermarket. But if you have ever visited any of those two places, how are the books arranged or organized in the library? And how are items or commodities arranged in a supermarket? Are they piled up? Are they stacked up? Do we find commodities in a supermarket where they are just piled up in heaps, in corners? Do we find books when they are just stacked up as heaps within the library? Of course, no. In a library, books are arranged based on authors, based on class. For example, if it is a secondary school library, you find that we have books for senior 1, we have books for senior 2, we have books for senior 3 and senior 4, or even up to senior 6. Likewise, in a supermarket, you cannot find soap mixed together with eatables. For example, yogurt. You find that commodities or items are arranged in shelves, and in every shelf or every part, you find that it has related products or items. You can find soap in a given compartment within the supermarket. You find yogurt, different varieties of yogurt in the same compartment. And you can find that in a given shelf, there is the same kind of product. The same way in the library. You can find in a given shelf, you only find biology book 1 books. Another shelf you find biology book 2 books, like that. Now, look at the environment where we are living in. Look at the environment where we stay. Look at your surrounding, your home, your school, in your classroom. How many living things do you see that surround you? Just imagine, how could scientists Study all of those living organisms that are surrounding you or that are found in your environment at once. Assuming a scientist is studying about insects, he finds a grasshopper. Then, by the time he's analyzing a grasshopper, he looks at another organism which resembles insects. And that one can be a locust, can be a termite, a housefly. It brings about confusion, studying organisms, different organisms at the same time, and there are very many. Look at the plants that are surrounding us. Look at the animals. Look at other living organisms that are within our environment. We cannot study them at once. Just like the way in the library, they have got an idea, or in a supermarket, of organizing things. Basing, like in a school library, they base on the author, they can base on the class, like that. And when you come to the supermarket, you find that commodities or items are arranged basing on the manufacturer, basing on the category of material of commodity. If they are eatables, for example, if it's milk products, you find them in a given compartment or shelf. If it's washing items or commodities, you find them in a given compartment. If it is scholastic materials, for example, books, you find them in their own compartment. And that's where we are going. Now, we said, what is classification? Just like the way books are arranged in a library, just like the way commodities or items are arranged in a supermarket, even in biology or science, classification is the sorting of living organisms into different groups basing on their similarities. We are saying is the sorting that's classification. We are saying is the sorting of living things in different groups based on their similarities. Now, let us look at the main reasons of classification. Why do we sort living organisms in different groups based on their similarities? Why? Just like I've said, in a school library, books are arranged. In a supermarket, commodities or items are arranged based on the category where they belong to. Just imagine if books were stacked up in heaps. You mix the books of Senior 1, Biology, you mix those of Senior 4, Physics, you mix those of Senior 4, History, like that. Or, when you go to a supermarket, just imagine if soap was mixed with sugar. When they're in a heap, not even when you're just in the same shelf, but when they are piled up in heaps. Assuming the customer comes, and the customer has to search for soap in sugar. If the customer is looking for, let me say, books, but books are in a heap, they are piled up together with other commodities, for example, utensils, anything. It really takes time for that person to find those things. The same way in a library. Just imagine if books are arranged in the way I've said that if they're in heaps, and we send you now to a library that you go and get us a book 2 or book 1 biology book. You'll find that it will take you so long to find those books. Someone is looking for this book and lands on another book which might be very interesting. So that book draws the attention of the person who is searching for the book. Instead of looking for the book he or she has come to look for, he will again turn his or her attention on the book he has found. And that's why, in the same way, in science or in biology, we have come up science come out with what we are calling classification. Because I gave an example. If a science is studying all those living things at once, you find that it's looking at insects at a given time and has found a grasshopper. By the time the scientist is analyzing the grasshopper, a housefly comes across, and now will shift the mind of the scientist to another living organism. So it makes it hard. So the main reason for classification, we can give like three. The first one, it is to make a study easier. When living organisms are grouped in different groups based on their similarities, we are able to look at a group of living organisms at once, one by one, and this helps us to analyze them. 2. When we classify living organisms, we are able to generate evolutionary relationships between or among the living organisms. We are able to know which organisms are related and how are they related. We know how these organisms related. Which one must have come from the other? Which one must have evolved from this one? If they are arranged in groups based on their similarities. Because we look at the similarities and we are able to know that this one, because it has this similarity to this one, any of the two must have evolved from the other. Another one. To avoid confusion, when we arrange living organisms in groups, we avoid the confusion. You'll find that some living organisms might resemble, some of them may look to be similar. Just imagine a fox and a dog. Someone can find a fox in the bush and says, this is a dog. Or if someone finds a fox in a compound, may think it's a dog. The same person may find a dog in bush or in a bush and thinks it's a fox because the two living organisms look somehow similar. They resemble each other. So, if they are not classified, we bring about confusion. We start calling different living organisms different names or referring them to other living organisms. And for this reason, therefore, we are able to classify the living organisms. And in addition, just this one, what avoids the confusion is by identifying them. So when we identify living organisms accurately, we get to know what a dog is and what a fox is. Next, we look at the levels of classification. Learners, classification is like the sorting of the clothes you have. Or like the way books are arranged in a school library, the same way commodities are arranged in a supermarket. Let us look at the clothes. You find someone, when you are sorting clothes, you start with heavy clothes, you put them aside. You place light clothes, you place them this way. And now, after again separating light clothes and heavy clothes, you turn on the heavy clothes. You look up which one are shirts. You place shirts aside. You place trousers aside. Or you place dresses the other side. When you come still on the light clothes, you separate them like that. And someone can go even further to sort the clothes again and says sorting by color. Says this one is, of course, they are heavy clothes, that's one. They are shirts, but this one is blue, this one is red. So the person sorts red shirts the other side, red dresses the other side, blue dresses the other side, red shirts, like that. Even the same thing on trousers. Even when you go to a school library, you find that in some libraries, books are arranged like this way. They start by grouping into two. They say science, arts. They begin like that. You find there is a side where you find science subjects, and there is a side where you find art subjects. Then you find somewhere where there are humanities. And now when you start, you find that on the side of science, it has a variety of books. But now they start again to group them into smaller groups. They say biology. You find that there is a part for biology books. There is a part for chemistry books. There is a part for physics books, mathematics, and so on. But again, in the part for biology, you find that they go further to group the books under biology. You find that there is biology senior 1, biology senior 2, biology senior 3, like up to senior 6. The same story to chemistry. So they keep on grouping. And you can find that again, within biology senior 1 books, there may be very many books of different authors. So you find that they are grouping books of the same author together. You find that books for this author, they are together. Books for another author, they are together. But of the same class, of the same subject. So, that kind of sorting commodities in a supermarket, or books in a library, or clothes, scientists also brought it in this classification. And now, they call this one hierarchy, taxonomic hierarchy. They call this one taxonomic hierarchy. They are arranging living organisms into groups. Starting from the largest group, they go to the smaller group up to the smallest group. And now, here we have a mnemonic, which says King Philip King Philip came over for wood spaghetti. This is our mnemonics, or our mnemonic. We are going to use it to understand the levels of organization. The science is called the taxonomic hierarchy, where king is standing for kingdom. Philip is standing for fire. K is standing for class. Over is standing for order. 4 is standing for family. Good is standing for genus. Spaghetti is standing for species. And now these are the 7 taxonomic units that science came up in what we are calling the taxonomic hierarchy, where we find that kingdom has the largest number of organisms, followed by phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Just like I said, in a school library, you can find science, arts. For example, the kingdom now can be the science. You find that under science we have biology, chemistry, physics. biology becomes the final. But again, when you go under the final biology, you find classes. Say senior 1, senior 2, senior 3, like that. Then again, under the classes, you find that there are different authors. You find there is MK, there is Baruch, there is, you find there is which other book? We have Fontaine and many others. And those ones now, we are calling them the order. And the classes, for example, bio senior 1, we have different authors. Like that. It is the same way scientists came up with a mechanism of how to group these living organisms. Just like the way you see, you can go in a supermarket. You find that a given side is for eatables. Apple, what was those fruits. But when you reach there, you find fruits one side. You find, let me say, milk products, what a given portion. You find the bread and many others. But again, there's another side where they are putting utensils, things which cannot be eaten. For example, utensils like the cups, saucepans, plates, and many others. You can find a compartment for stationery materials. You find books in their compartment. But again, among the books, you find the small exercise books, the counter books, like that, when they are arranged in different groups. So the kind of arranging from a smallest to a largest is what we are calling, or the largest to smallest is what we are calling the taxonomic hierarchy. It's like in our country, Uganda. You find that we have the country down the region, where we have very many living organisms or people. But within the country, we have a district where you find a small group of people. And again, the districts, we have the sub-counties, it can be the class. We have the counties before you go to sub-county. We have the counties, we have the sub-counties. You find that we are going to have parishes, which can be our family. And now from here, you find our villages, which we can call it the genus. And now our homestead, or household, can be now the species. These are the levels of classification where science grouped living organisms. The scientific nomenclature. The naming of living organisms in a scientific way. I have one living organism. Let us look at a dog. A dog has different common names based on the region or the tribe. You find that the Basonga call it Mbwa. The Baganda will call it Mbwa. When you go to in Nyankole, they call it Mga. When you go to the Kalamajones, for them they will call it Nyi Ngoko. You find that the same living organisms has different names. The same living organism is having different names based on the tribe or the region or the country or the language. This brings about confusion. Just imagine if two sons are together and they are from different tribes or they are using different languages. Someone is using Luganda, another person is using a language the Kalamajongs use. You find that the Muganda will say Mbwa, and the other side someone will say Nyi Ngoko. Now, if they are really referring to this organism, and maybe the organism is not available, how will the Muganda or the person using the Luganda understand what the other person is talking about? And how will the other person who is using another language understand that the Muganda is meaning the dog when he or she says Mbwa? It brings confusion. The common names bring confusion. That's why scientists in classification, they have brought naming of living organisms using scientific names. And the scientists who brought about this, it was in the 17th century. This was Carolus Linnaeus. brought this idea of scientific naming. And now, the scientific system of naming living organisms, we call it binomial nomenclature. Nomenclature means naming. Now, binomial, we are naming living organisms, giving them two names. Each living organism scientifically has two names. And these two names, we have the genus name and we have the species name. We have the genus name and the species name. The genus name, the first letter is a capital. And the species name, the first letter is not capitalized. And the entire word is in small letters. And if we are typing the name or the scientific name of a living organism, if we are typing, we italicize these two names. If we are writing using the hand, then we have underline and we underline separately. For example, the dog, it is called Canis familiaris. Now, because I'm writing, I have to underline separately. The first name is a genus and the second name is a species name. We have to know that there have to be two names. That is the genus name and the species name. Then from here, we understand we call formatting. That the first name, which is the genus name, the first letter has to be capital. Then this one is not capitalized. Then from there, we have to italicize if we are typing. Then, if we are using the hand to write, we have to underline because handwritten work cannot be italicized. You'll find that another one, for example, this is dog. We have mice. Mice we call mice. This is the genus name and this is the species name. You find that these names are in Latin. Latin, we call it an extinct language because there is no more native who is using this kind of language. So, and we cannot translate it from Latin to an English or to another language because it is an extinct language. So, we have kept the name of these living organisms in the Latin language because it was brought in the 17th century and now the language is an extinct one or the dead one. Therefore, we cannot translate these names into the common languages. That's why we maintain them in the Latin language. Now, if now we are using, just imagine a scientist from Uganda and a scientist from Japan. They are referring to a dog and they are using this scientific name which is Canis familiaris. Each of them will get to know that we are talking of a dog. Even if they are not using the same language, when someone talks about Canis familiaris, what comes to the minds of a science is that living organism, and it will be a dog. Otherwise, when they are using their common names, for example, the one I gave over the dog, the Muganda is calling wow. The person from Karamajong is saying Nyi Ngoko. It is really hard. It brings about the confusion. Someone else, you find that a scientist is getting confused about the same living organism he or she knows very well. That's why scientific nomenclature is so important. And this is the binomial nomenclature of living things. We have the genus and the species name. Now, you need you can go further and you rate their scientific names of these living organisms. For example, we can have potato, we can have goat, human being, or man, and many others. Every living organism has, or every living thing has a scientific name. So this is what we were supposed to look at in this session. I hope we have learned. We have looked at what classification is, and we have defined that this is the sorting of living things in different groups based on their similarities. Second to that, we looked at the main reasons of classification, and we said we classify living organisms to ease studying them. We classify living organisms to be able to establish evolutionary relationships. Then, to identify living organisms and avoid confusion. Then further, we have looked at the levels of organization. We have got the mnemonic, which is King Philip came over for Goudou spaghetti, where we have listed the 7 taxonomic hierarchy, from kingdom up to species, and every letter on a word in our mnemonic was representing a level of organization. From there, we have looked at the scientific nomenclature, and we have known that in naming living organisms using in the scientific system, what we are calling the binomial nomenclature, a living organism has 2 names, that is the genus and the species name. Then we have looked at the rules of formatting these names. We have said that the genus name starts with a capital letter and the species name is in small letters. Then we have said that we have to italicize the 2 names if we are typing. And if it's not in soft copy, when we are writing, then we have to underline the 2 names separately. Thank you for attending this session.